In this episode, people of Reddit, when as one time you have felt genuine, 100% fear. Story number 1. It was 5 years ago almost to the day. I was home with my 2 daughters who at the time were 3 and just over 1. I was giving them a bath, kneeling on the ground, and all of a sudden it felt like something exploded in my heart. I remember thinking, just get the kids out of the water, nothing else matters. I got them out of the water and was able to call an ambulance. I was taken to the hospital and long story short, I had blood clots in both lungs and my right knee. They think a piece of the knee blood clot broke free and passed through my heart. I am very lucky to be alive and so grateful I was able to get my daughters out of the tub. I found out I have multiple blood clotting disorders and am on blood thinners for life, but I am alive. Story number 2. Running out of gas in my boat with my girlfriend in open water during a storm. Ended up on a shoal trying to hold the boat while a friend brought us more fuel. Honestly thought the waves would wash us away and drown. Story number 3. This was a combination of fear and shock, but 2 years ago my now wife's landlord roommate committed suicide. The day before he did, he texted me asking if I could come by after work to feed his cats. He said he would be leaving and wouldn't be back in time to feed them. It was a brutal 13-hour day. I came home first, grabbed my wife then GF, who was at my apartment, to come with me so we could feed his cats and then go grab a late dinner. When we arrived, we opened the front door which led directly to the stairs, townhome type setup, garage first floor, main living area on the second. On the stairs there was an envelope addressed to me, and the note inside was pretty much face value. My wife and I were joking and in high spirits on the way over there, and she really needed to pee. So she was a few steps in front of me, as I was reading the note, which seemed like a fantasy. This is where my reality turned into a haze. The second sentence was, "There's no mess, but I have killed myself and I'm upstairs in my bedroom with the door closed." As soon as I read this I very sternly told my wife, "Get down here right now and wait outside." I made the short trek up the stairs, glanced to my right and saw his bedroom door closed. This is where my fear was at its peak, hoping this was just a fucked up hallucination. But when I reached for the doorknob and opened, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He had a large medical-sized tank of nitrous that he had rigged up to a suicide bag, Google if you must, that he placed over his head, and secured with a headband around his throat. His whole head was so purple and blue. I could feel myself about to puke and I kind of tripped going back down the stairs and outside. I took my phone out without saying anything to my girlfriend, and she only found out when I told the 911 dispatcher that my girlfriend's roommate had committed suicide. After somewhat composing myself and heeding the dispatcher's advice, I ran back upstairs and removed the bag and began giving CPR, but I only made it like 10 pumps because fluids began coming out his mouth and his eyes rolled open, and they were just glosses over and lifeless and gone. The paramedics said he was gone for a while and there wasn't anything more I could have done, but I still wonder, had I not gone downstairs first after discovering him to make the call, and if I would have taken that fucking plastic bag off immediately, he might have had a chance. Story number 4. When I was still a beginning driver, I basically misjudged a turn at a highway exit when it was raining. My car swiveled and turned around. Somehow I managed to get it to stop, but I ended up bumping the side railing with the back of my car, and the car turning more than 180 degrees on the road before coming to a halt. This is a very busy exit, and if someone had been right behind me I'd have been dead. Somehow I managed to gather my wits, restart the car, turn it around, and drive off before another car hit me. I stopped at the earliest possible parking opportunity, and that was when I felt it, the fear. I just started shaking uncontrollably. Story number 5. The morning of my mom's wedding. Everyone relaxing. Eating breakfast. Clothes everywhere. Cousins running around. All of the adults are on their porch chilling. I hear my daughter screaming. I run in the dining room. There were clothes draped over the back of a dining room chair. The clothes had a metal coat hanger on them. She had gotten the hook of the metal hanger under her eyelid. I grabbed the back of her head and slowly pulled the hook out. Put a little ice on her eye for a bit. Luckily, it hadn't hit her eyeball at all. Story number 6. A few years back I was in a toxic relationship with an individual suffering from several mental illness. He refused to take medications. I had not a clue how bad it had gotten until he was driving us back to our apartment. He started rambling about how God chose him to save my soul and I was a fallen angel. He would send me back to heaven. He floored the gas on a short dead-end road and almost drove into a cement wall. I remember briefly wondering if I should put the car at 50 miles per hour, or stay in and pray the airbag saved me. He slammed the brake last minute as I was about to open the door and jump, absolute fear. I ended up hospitalized a few days later due to other shitty relationship-related events and never saw him again. Hands down, one of the more terrifying moments of my life, but not the only one I experienced by being with him. Story number 7. I was flying an airliner. We were maybe 1,000 above the ground while on approach to land at a smaller airport. There were thunderstorms in the area and we ended up in a microburst with zero visibility. We got a wind shear warning in the cockpit and started to go around. At full throttle and the nose up we were still sinking at around 400 feet per minute. Everything seemed to be running in slow motion. Both me and the other pilot were running through our required actions and call-outs due to the training. In the back of my mind all I could think about was I can't see the ground and we are falling. I know there is a hill out here somewhere, this is where I am going to die. The plane got down to around 400 feet off the ground before it finally started to climb. This was the most fear I had ever felt in my life. Story number 8. When I was trying to sleep at around 3 and felt someone press on my bed. Then bag on the chair started shaking. Then again I felt something on my bed. Finally I had the courage to switch on light and found a giant rat on my bed. Story number 9. I used to measure roofs for a solar company. One time I went up on a very steep roof of a 2-story house alone, and without a harness. This roof plane was too steep to walk and the shingles were old and crumbling, so I had to crawl so I didn't slide down towards the edge. After about an hour of crawling around, the sun began to bake the shingles so they were too hot to touch, so I decided to bug out. As the roof was too steep to walk, the only way to the ladder was by scooting on my butt with my feet pointed towards the edge. Every time I'd skid toward the edge my heart exploded in fear because it was hard to stop from moving. I had to use my hands to slow myself down and they were getting burned. All I could do was to rub my palms on my legs to transfer some of the heat, but they were being scorched. Imagine putting your hand on a hot frying pan full of grit. I was completely alone, in a faraway town, with no one to call. It took forever to get to the ladder and by the time I did I was shaking and drenched in sweat. When I finally got back to the ground some people came out from a nearby house and said they saw me and were ready to call 911. I had burned blisters on both palms and I never went on a roof like that again without a helper or PPE. Story number 10. I was riding my bike home from work along a pretty busy main road. I live in the city. I got to a downhill and started to pick up pace when I noticed a brown snake, which are very deadly, lying across the bike just lane ahead of me. There was a car in the lane next to me and it was too late to stop, but I somehow managed to dodge the snake and kept riding. About 50 meters later, just as I thought I was safe, I heard a very loud hissing and felt something rush past my leg and thought the snake had somehow caught up and bitten me. It turns out my back tire burst, but in the moment I was absolutely terrified. Story number 11. When my mom and then 5-year-old brother got in an ATV accident. They were driving slow through the woods and a large, dead tree fell alongside the trail, knocking down a smaller tree, which hit them both in the head. Freak accident. My other brother and I were outside filling the pool and we heard my mom yelling something. I didn't know what it was, but my stomach dropped. We both ran to the head of the trail across the yard, and she was carrying my little brother, both covered in blood. She ran half of that mile-long trail carrying him. They were both in the hospital for a week. Mom got some stitches in her face, and my brother's skull was shattered, requiring surgery and a metal plate put in. He's graduating high school next year and doing well. Story number 12. The time I got into bed with my girlfriend and immediately started coughing up blood. Ran into the bathroom and held onto the sink for dear life. Every breath I tried to take I just ended up wheezing more blood out of my lungs. By the time the ambulance got there I had pretty much come to terms that this was how I died. Then it slowed down and finally stopped by the time I got to the ER. Long story short, it turned out to be Hodgkin's lymphoma. Had chemo for 6 months and am cured now with minimal repercussions. Scariest time of my life. Story number 13. We used to go sailing in the BVI's for summer holidays when I was younger. One evening we were anchored in a bay with a party boat of teenage Americans nearby. After some alcohol, starting a water fight seemed like a great idea. At some point during the ensuing chaos, I ended up kidnapped and held as a hostage on their tender little motor boat for getting from sailboat to shore. They decided to drive me out to sea, and once we were thoroughly out of the bay, they started joking about tossing me overboard. Drunk me is not smart. Drunk me thought the best response to this joke threat was to stand up and yell, "You can't throw me overboard if I jump out," which I promptly did. They laughed and drove off. I was left floating in the middle of the sea about half a mile from shore in the pitch black. At first the alcohol stopped me from panicking and I decided to just swim back. Half a mile isn't that bad, right? Now my brain was beginning to wonder what was swimming around beneath me, but I was mostly calm until something bounced off my leg. This is the point at which I need to introduce you to the villain of this story. You see, usually the BVI's has lovely safe clear waters. However, once every 4 to 5 years they get unusually high numbers of moon jellyfish. Of course, moons aren't scary at all. They rarely sting, and when they do it's not even as painful as a nettle sting. They really weren't the problem. It was the creature that used them as a food source that was the danger. Known colloquially as the stinging cauliflower. They were purple balls of pure evil. In our marine life books, they were the only jellyfish that got the same danger pain rating as the man-o'-war jellyfish. Earlier that holiday, a young girl from another boat got stung while playing on the beach. We heard her scream from about a quarter of a mile out the bay at anchor. She went into anaphylactic shock and almost died. Side story, the vinegar and talcum powder we had stocked for jellyfish stings apparently saved her life according to the emergency responders, because we zoomed it over when we heard the mayday on the radio. Anyway, back to my story. There I was half a mile out from shore in the pitch black with no idea if these kids were going to come back and get me or if they would even be able to find me again in the dark, since I had no idea if I was drifting with any current. A moon jellyfish had just bounced off my leg, and where there are moons there were always cauliflowers. I was pretty certain if I swam into one and got stung, chances are I wouldn't be able to stay afloat and I would drown. I start to feel genuinely sick and scared, struggle to keep my breathing under control, etc. But there's nothing to do except swim and hope to high heaven I don't hit one. So that's what I did. It was over 15 minutes before the shitheads came back to get me. By this point the panic and swimming had turned my muscles to jelly and they had to literally haul me back into the boat. I never told my family or friends on the holiday, didn't want to ruin their fun. I just quietly told folks I was tired and went to bed. To this day I can still taste the salt in my mouth and feel my heart rate and breathing increase when I tell that story. TLDR, I am a stupid drunk and jumped in jellyfish-infested water in the middle of the night and got left there and tried to swim back. Am lucky I'm not dead. Story number 14. I was sitting in the waiting room of the ICU talking to my aunt. My dad has just been moved from the to the ICU that morning. My mom was with him, but I had to go to the waiting room while they got him settled in. All of a sudden, I hear code blue ICU room XYZ. I didn't even know what his room was, but I just had this terrible feeling. My entire body goes numb. I look at my aunt and say I am going back there. As soon as I open the ICU ward door, a nurse looks at me and says, "Are you the daughter of so-and-so?" with a very empathetic look on her face. And I say, "Yes." "OMG, is that my dad? Is that my dad coding?" She says, "Come with me." We sprint down the hall to the back of the ICU and I turn the corner to see a room full of people. My mom is standing in the corner. In complete shock. My 100% genuine fear? Standing in the corner of the watching nurses perform CPR on my dad. For 17 minutes, CPR is nothing like you see on TV. Any medical professional will agree with me. It is violent and intense. There were about 15 people in the room and it is intense. Organized chaos. It is one of the worst memories I have, but talking about it somewhat helps. I miss you, Dad. Story number 15. I got alcohol poisoning and it didn't hit till I was on a train. I had gone to the train bathroom to throw up, but I was dry heaving and I didn't have water, and I could feel myself starting to black out. I was so fucked up I couldn't even see straight enough to figure out how to open the door, and I started to think, oh my god, I'm going to die in a train bathroom with my skirt hiked up, they're going to take pictures of this, oh my god, people are going to see me like this. It was the most afraid for my life I've ever been, not because I was going to die, but because I was going to die alone, in a train bathroom, because I was too stupid to stop doing shots. As I started to see spots, someone grabbed me by the hair, forced a water bottle between my lips and was like, swallow, and I did, and I puked. And I did again, and I puked. And he got another bottle and did the same. And we went like that until I held down a few sips, and blood started flowing to my head again. He got off at my stop and walked me home, waited while I threw up a couple times, and made sure my boyfriend was there to take care of me when I got home. The whole time, he was just bitching at me. Just a non-stop flow of, do you understand how much of a burden you've put on other people? I am going to be 3 hours late getting home cause I missed my stop making sure you were alright. This is irresponsible, you need to take better care of yourself, learn your limits, and for fuck's sake, if you're not going to do that at least wear pants. Just non-stop, he was right, on all counts, of course. That's what I love about Boston. People are assholes, all of them, but they're assholes that look out for one another. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe for more.